Hey guys, since it's What Are You Reading Wednesday, I decided to put on my old lady glasses, so we are on the very first chapter. Land of Stories, book 3. This one is called An Educational Opportunity. Here we go. It was midnight and only one light was on in all of the homes in Sycamore Drive. In the second-story window of Dr. Robert Gordon's house was a shadow that moved back and forth. It was his stepson, Connor Bailey, pacing around his bedroom. He had known for months he was going to Europe, but had waited until the night before his departure to pack. Reruns of the dramatic television show in the outer space did nothing to help his procrastination. There was just something about the female captain piloting her crew away from the evil alien race that he couldn't take his eyes off. But looking up at his clock and realizing he only had 7 hours before he needed to be at the airport forced him to turn the TV off and focus on packing. Smart. Let me think, Connor said to himself. I'll be in Germany for 3 days, so I should probably bring 12 pairs of socks. He confidently nodded and tossed about a dozen pairs of socks into his suitcase. You never know, there could be a lot of puddles in Europe. Connor retrieved 10 or so pairs of underwear from his dresser and laid them all out on the bed. It was more than he needed, but a traumatizing sleepover in kindergarten had ended up with a wet bed that taught Connor to always be generous when packing underwear. Life lesson. Okay, I think I have everything, Connor said, and he counted the items in his suitcase. I've got 7 t-shirts, 4 sweaters, my Lucky Rock, 2 scarves, and the other Lucky Rock, underwear, socks, pajamas, my Lucky Poker Chip, and my toothbrush. He looked around the room, wondering what else a kid could need in Europe. Oh, pants, he said, thankful that he had remembered. I need pants. Once he had added the missing and vital articles to his suitcase, Connor sat on the edge of his bed and took a deep breath. A big boyish smile came on his face. He couldn't help it. He was excited. At the very end of the school year, Connor's principal, Mrs. Peters, had called him into her office and presented him with a very exciting opportunity. Am I in trouble? Connor had said when he sat down in front of her desk. Mr. Bailey, why do you ask him that every time I call you into my office? She said, eyeing him over the top of her glasses. You can see how that would be, right? Oh, sorry, old habits die hard, I guess, he shrugged. I've called you here in here for 2 reasons, Mrs. Peters said. First, I was wondering how Alex is acclimating to her new school in, where is it again, Vermont? Connor gulped and his eyes grew very big. Oh, he said. Sometimes he forgot about the lie that his family had to tell the school about his sister. She's doing great. Never been happier. Mrs. Peters bit her lip and nodded, almost disappointed to hear this. That's wonderful. Good for her. She said, although sometimes I selfishly wish she would move back and be one of our students again. Your mother was telling me all about the educational programs that they offer up there, though, so I'm sure she's enjoying all of them. She sure is, Connor said, and looked to his left to avoid eye contact. And Alex has always loved trees and maple syrup, so Vermont suits her. I see, Mrs. Peters said, squinting. And she's staying with your grandmother, is that correct? Yes, she's still with my grandma, who also loves trees and maple syrup. It's a family trait, I guess, Connor said, and then looked to his right. He panicked for a second when he couldn't remember which direction people tend to look when they're lying. He had seen it on a special on TV. Then give her my warmest regards, and please tell her to visit the next time she's in town, Mrs. Peters said. Oh, I will, Connor said, relieved to be changing the subject. Now, on to the second reason I've called you in today, Mrs. Peters said. She sat straight up in her seat and slid a pamphlet across her desk. I have just heard some exciting news from an old colleague of mine who teaches English in Frankfurt, Germany. Apparently, the University of Berlin has uncovered a time capsule that belonged to the Brothers Grimm. I'm assuming you remember who they are from the lessons in 6th grade. Are you kidding me? My grandma knew them. Connor said, excuse me? Connor just stared at her for a moment, mortified by his carelessness. I mean, yeah, of course I remember. Connor tried to cover. They're the fairy tale guys, right? My grandma used to read us stories. Indeed, Mrs. Peters said with a smile. She had grown used to Connor's strange outbursts. She didn't even question this one for a second. And according to the University in Berlin, 3 brand new fairy tales were discovered in the capsule. That's amazing, Connor said. He was actually genuinely excited to hear this and knew his sister would be thrilled too. I agree, Mrs. Peters said. And even better, the University of Berlin is planning a big event to reveal the stories. They're going to read them in public for the first time this coming September, 3 weeks into the school year, at St. I don't know even what that thing is, something Mathis Kursloff Cemetery, where the brothers Grimm were buried. All great things, Connor said. So what does this have to do with me? Well, since you're a bit of a Grimm yourself, Connor awkwardly laughed and looked to his left. She had no idea how close to home this compliment was. I thought you'd be interested in the trip I'm planning. Mrs. Peters slid the pamphlet even closer to Connor. I've decided to invite a few select students, such as yourself, students who have proven to be passionate about writing and storytelling, to venture with me to Berlin and be among the crowd that hears the stories for the first time. Connor picked up the pamphlet and stared down at it with an open mouth. That sounds awesome! He flipped it open and looked through the attractions of the city of Berlin had to offer. Could we check these nightclubs too? Unfortunately, missing more than a week of school for any trip is frowned upon by the school district. So no nightclubs, I'm afraid. We'll only be there for 3 days, but I thought this might be an opportunity you wouldn't want to miss, Mrs. Peters said with a confident smile. I feel like a little piece of history is waiting for us. Connor's smile faded when his eyes fell to the bottom of the pamphlet and he saw how much the trip would cost. Oh, this is a bit pricey educational opportunity, Connor said. Travel's never cheap, I'm afraid, Mrs. Peters said, but there are many school fundraisers I could get you information about. Oh, wait, I keep forgetting that my mom just married a doctor. We're not poor anymore, Connor said, and his smile returned. But wait, does that mean I'm still poor? I'll have to ask them. There's so much a stepson thing I just haven't